Hello and welcome to the YYC Soccer Podcast. My name is Jason Komet and my co-host is Scott Strasser. Hi, Scott.
Hey, Jason. I'm nursing a bit of a back injury tonight, but other than that, I'm doing well. How about you?
Yeah, it's going pretty well. No complaints on my end here. I'm looking forward to a couple big League One games on Friday here. It should be interesting. So before we go on further, if you are a new listener to our podcast, what is the YYC Soccer Podcast all about, Scott?
The YYC Soccer Podcast focuses on soccer in Calgary at the amateur, collegiate, and professional levels. We talk about the teams and players from the city's soccer community, from grassroots and amateur leagues up to the university and professional level.
Yeah, and this week we're going to talk, as I mentioned a little bit already, League One Alberta. The championship finals are coming up on Friday. We're also going to recap the Cavs match last weekend in Vancouver, that 5-1 victory. We'll talk a little bit of Alberta Summer Games and then also do a bit of a preview for the Cavs versus their bogey team, Ottawa, that they're playing this weekend.
Yeah, and we also have 2 interviews this episode, which is pretty rare for us, but we managed to talk to some coaches from some League One Alberta teams. So we'll get to that in a bit. But yeah, lots, as usual, to discuss.
Let's talk a little bit about that Cavalry match where they went to Vancouver and posted a 5-1 victory. It was a little bit of a wild game in some ways. And in the end, the Cavs are at the top of the table.
Yeah, I think it was a combination of Cavalry showing some ruthlessness and Vancouver crumbling defensively. There's a bit of deja vu early on as Vancouver earned a very early red card, which definitely impacted the proceedings from that point forward. However, compared to last time Cavalry went west to play Vancouver, this time they were able to capitalize offensively, not just a few times, but 5 times in total. Ali Musi had a fantastic game, and there was a lot of things clicking for Cavalry. So all in all, it was certainly a statement win. And yeah, like you mentioned, it puts them in first place of the Canadian Premier League for the very first time this year.
I watched the match and it was fun to watch if you're from a Cavs perspective. And, I couldn't believe that Musi goal that he scored with his non-dominant foot. And that was a brilliant shot. And when you think about it, that's not his main foot. I was like, how can you do that?
Yeah, I was even more impressed by his bit of trickery in the first half where he dribbled past one defender and then did that Zidane spin around the other one and then had a shot that was saved. But no, he was on fire, which, if you're a Cavalry fan, you love to see it.
Yeah, I really think at this point, I think one of the things about not watching every single match all across the league, I don't know if this is, fair to say, because I spend most of my time watching the Cavs matches, but geez, he's got to be in the MVP discussion for this year.
And I see people who write for One Soccer or the CPL website, they're saying the same thing. So I think he definitely has a shout. And I'm like you, I watch almost every Cavalry match, but I can't say I've watched a lot of other teams' matches against other teams. So I'm not exactly sure who the standout player of the CPL season has been, but I know Musi is in that conversation. His numbers kind of reflect that, but just his play overall and his consistency this year compared to previous seasons, because he's always been capable of these moments, but this season we're just seeing them more and more often, and it's great that he's found his footing and that he's having such a great campaign.
Yep, agree for sure. And I think the other thing to mention about this match is that Meyer Bevan got a red card, so he won't be at the Ottawa match. But Akio, I think we want to talk a little bit about him. He did get in for, I don't know, was it maybe 15, 20 minutes at the end?
Yeah, and I like how he looked. He was showing his pace right away, and he showed his eye for goal as well. He had that shot from a pretty tight angle that Irving saved. So based on just this brief appearance, it's looking like a good signing, right? And Willie Akio, like we talked about quite a bit in the last episode, he has pace, he has height, he provides a little bit something different for Cavalry going forward. But yeah, like we've already mentioned, the headline maker was undoubtedly Musi. Regarding Bevan's red card, I would be frustrated by that if I was a Cavalry coach, just because you're losing him for what's going to be a tough game against Ottawa. And it was like, clearly Bevan was pissed off by something that had happened, because it was a pretty blatant foul. And yeah, things were getting pretty heated at the end of the game there.
Okay, let's go back to the Cavs in a little bit, but let's move on to League One. So on Friday evening, there are the two final matches for League One, and there are Calgary clubs involved in both of them. On the women's side, the Blizzard are traveling up to St. Albert, and they're going to play there. And then on the men's side, St. Albert is coming to Calgary. They're going to play Foothills at Broadview at 7 p.m. on Friday night.
Yeah, and on the men's side, you'd probably assume Foothills has the upper hand in this one. Home city advantage, and they beat St. Albert 3-0 and 3-1 in their two regular season games against them. On the women's side, however, it's probably the opposite. I think you'd consider St. Albert the favorite this Friday. They were able to beat Blizzard 3-0, although that was, they beat them 3-0, and then there was also a goalless draw between Blizzard and St. Albert, but that was back in early June. And as our first interview source will discuss, Blizzard is definitely preparing well for this one. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, and we have the head coaches of both Calgary teams competing on Friday night. First, we have Diogo Raposo from the Blizzard, and we had a chance to chat with him a little bit about the final match and how the season has gone this year in League One. We'd like to welcome Diogo Raposo to the podcast. He was previously on the podcast to preview the League One Alberta season for Calgary Blizzard, and now we want to talk as we're going into the final match on Friday and get a little bit of a preview. Thanks for joining us, Diogo.
Thanks for having me on again, guys.
How has the team's preparation been leading up to this championship game? I know you did play a match on Monday, like just yesterday, as we're recording this. So, how have you been able to prepare?
It's been tricky. A lot of our players, both from the U.S. as well as Canada, have gone back to school. As early as the first time we played St. Albert, we had 6 new starters in the lineup because of it. So a lot of our leaders, especially the ones that play in the U.S. and some of our vets, have stepped away a little bit, and we've got kind of a rolling. I guess we're in a lucky position where we have lots of players in our women's program, so we've got lots to call up from. But different faces at training, different back line, different pieces in very important areas. So it's been tricky from that, just to get a cohesion again and to get everyone on the same page. But the group is connected. A lot of them are Blizzard, I'd say, born and bred, and they understand kind of our game model and how we want to play. So it's been tricky, but it's been good as well, because young players are getting a lot of opportunities. Last night's game, we had 06s, 07s play 90 minutes within that game and be involved, and that's what the league's for. You want to promote your young athletes who are ready or very close to being ready to challenge and hopefully create a pathway for them.
So without giving too much away, Diogo, what would you say the key strengths of your squad are, and what do you feel can make a difference in the championship game this week?
I'd say 80 to 90% of our squad are Blizzard players. I think they play with a lot of pride, commitment, and passion for each other. I think that'd be our strength. When they look at our crest and they feel like they belong, I think that's very powerful, especially when you go into a final where I'm going to use a Jose Mourinho quote: finals are meant to be won and not to be played. I think that passion, that commitment to each other probably goes a long way in a game like that. I think that would be our biggest strength. Of course, we're athletic, we're technical, and have those other pieces, but I think that would be kind of our catalyst, or where we'd say could change the game for us.
Our next question was, you've kind of already partially answered it, but I'll ask it anyway. So as a head coach, how do you keep the players motivated and focused on the task without putting too much pressure on them? I think, how do you do that balancing act?
We've taken an approach this summer. We've given every weekend off to the players. So we typically play Friday. We give them Saturday, Sunday off. And really, these players need a summer, especially when they're training 9-10 months of the year at the universities. We wanted to give them a balance where, hey, we're going to give you a really competitive environment where training is good and there's purpose into everything that we're doing. But we don't want it to be maybe as draining as university or the time commitment as much as university. We've never really done like game film of those pieces. Of course, me being who I am, I'll watch the game film and try to give them some pieces, but we don't provide or have them as much or as many hours as they would in a university environment to give them a bit of a break. They still need the long weekends off. They need to go spend time with their friends and family and have a mental health break. I think it's important before really to step into a preseason where I'm sure every environment they're going into it's difficult, it's hot, it's a lot of hours, it's team bonding. So we want to just try to get that balance. And I think those days off, as well as kind of the reduced hours of time commitment is good for them, again, to spend time with family. A lot of them, if not all of them, have summer jobs as well. So making it a really enjoyable environment while also giving them the quality they desire to prep them for university.
So Diogo, Blizzard has mostly produced a winning record this summer, but obviously there were a couple of results. I think there was that goalless draw early on and a 3-0 loss on the road. Looking at those games in particular, what do you feel were some of the lessons learned this year?
I'd say that 0-0 game versus St. Albert at home was highly competitive. It could have gone either way, and that's what the games we want to be a part of, where you don't step into a game knowing that you'll win, and it's a matter of how. It's that uncertainty. Same thing when we went to St. Albert. I think, like I said earlier, here we had 6 new starters in that, and maybe I got some pieces wrong, or just tactically we needed to adapt a little bit quicker. It's tough when you have 6 changes and you go and play the top team in the league. Yesterday's game, quite similar, played Foothills last night, and I think it's getting everyone on the same page. It's going towards a common goal. And with that flux of players in and out, I think that's been the tough piece. I think we need to go back to being difficult to play against. We kept in our first 5 games a clean sheet in every single game. We've allowed a couple leaky goals that we'd like to have back in some of the more recent games. I think we need to go back to our DNA, be very difficult to play against, be gritty, be a team that no one wants to play, really, and they're going to feel it at the end of the game, obviously within limitations. But I think that's what our DNA is, and we've given up some. Last night we gave up some goals we'd like to have back, maybe a soft PK, a turnover in our own third. Things that are uncharacteristic, but it's going to happen when, again, we have that mix of players coming in and trying to find our feet. But I'm actually glad we played last night, because it gives us a bit of I'll call it a training session to prepare for Friday and to hopefully nip some loose ends.
So when we talk about St. Albert as the opposition, I wanted to touch on one of their players, Grace Maswala, I believe. She is she is a former Blizzard player, isn't she? And she led the league in scoring this year. How does it feel to be facing her in the championship final?
Grace is amazing. Her backstory at Blizzard's amazing. She was, I believe, at Tier 3 or Tier 4 evaluation. She was a former basketball player and someone who quite late, probably at 13, 14, I might have got that wrong, but 13, 14, probably started to play Tier 2 for the first time and then transitions to Tier 1. And she's probably one of the most competitive players that I've ever coached. I coached her probably 3-4 years before she went to university, and extremely competitive, great personality, positive 99% of the time, and a great leader. It's always fun competing against her because at the end of the game, you can't not smile and not have a great conversation with her. But during the game, you want to get her out of the game somehow and close her down, because she can affect the game in so many ways as a 9, but also she likes to drift into midfield. But those are the matchups you want. That's the relationships you want here in Alberta, where you've seen players progress from 13 years old and a Tier 3 player, Tier 4 player, where that's where we want our kids in our current club at Blizzard to see, wow, like Grace came through the system. Grace wasn't a Tier 1 player from U9, U10. She's gone through the hard work, and look at where she is. And I'll go and I'll say this again, and I said it to Dean Cordero when he was recruiting her to McEwen. I think she'll be Canada West Player of the Year this year as well. She was probably 2nd or 3rd in the running last year. She's that good, and would not be surprised at all if she's not Canada West Player of the Year this year.
Yeah, she's definitely been a weapon this year. One player, Diogo, who was a weapon for you, at least for the first bit of the season, was Kaylee Hunter, who I believe scored 6 goals before she moved on to Whitecaps in BC. Do I have that right?
She had 7. She had 7 in her first, I believe, 5 games.
7 and 5. Okay, so what was it like to kind of lose her to BC, and what did she provide to the team, and how have you since kind of replaced those goals?
Kaylee's special. Kaylee will probably, if not most likely, play on our full national team one day. That's the type of quality that she has. She was within the first 5 games the leading scorer of this league, as in 2008, as probably one of the youngest, if not the youngest player in this league. She is that good. She's obviously, this league is about pathways. It's about providing opportunities. She's in Vancouver now with the Whitecaps League One team, and hopefully we'll be invited to the U17 national camp here at the end of August. But that's what it's about. She, again, another player who's extremely competitive. Will stay after training for a half hour to 45 minutes doing stuff on her own. She's willing to put in that extra work. It's not just an inherited talent. She puts in that work, and to be honest, for 2008 was a bit of a role model maybe to some players who are older than her. We've had a deep squad. Alyssa Dagnoni, who's probably our second leading scorer, has kind of shifted roles from a winger to a number 9 or a striker, and scored 3 versus Scottish. And we got to do it by committee now. I think even at times we relied on Kaylee too much because we knew at any moment she could have a magical moment and put the ball in the back of the net. But now it's about our whole committee and our whole team finding a way to get it done. But some of the players have picked up that slack for sure.
One thing, when we're talking about the players in the lineup, you mentioned some players have gone back to school. Can you give us a little bit of an update about who will be available and who has already gone back to school and who we can expect to see in the lineup on Friday?
Yeah, without giving too much away.
Right, yeah.
You would have seen our lineup, Emma and Mila Schneider, who both play University of Maine. They've been gone since after the 5th game. Obviously, Kaylee Hunter, like we've talked about. Rebecca Morgan is back at UBC, just to name a few. We have actually a premier women's team in Calgary Women's Soccer Association that is a bunch of ex-Dinos, and that team has really stepped up. Players like a Kelsey McDonald, and Maya Lee, who played for Dinos when they were runners-up of U Sport Nationals in 2019. Jess Thomas, who is, I believe, 32, has kind of stepped in. Rahana Marani, who played at Canada U20 national team, has kind of filled in a role as well. She's 32 as well. So we've got some veterans there who they still have a competitive level about them. They still want to be role models and provide kind of our younger players some guidance in those. And I think they'll play a role on Friday for sure. We'll be younger as well as maybe a little bit older with some veterans who are coming in to fill some gaps and help us out. But I think the core, probably 6, 7, 8 players are still from the beginning of the season who have played large roles for us. It's kind of those remaining and out of town university kids who've gone back.
What do you expect in regards to the atmosphere playing away from home in St. Albert this weekend? I'm actually not really familiar with the setup they have there, but what's it like?
The setup there is quite good. They've got a clubhouse overlooking the pitch with a patio overlooking beer gardens. Fans were very good last time. I'm hoping more of our fans are able to make the trip up to give us some life and some energy, because they've been amazing at home and they've really helped us. But I think they'll be up for it. A lot of kind of the MacEwan University players are obviously playing with St. Albert, and their preseason will be starting soon as well. So I'm sure some of their incoming recruits or incoming players who are out of town will be around, and they'll make it a good environment. They had tons of youth players there as well. So St. Albert's done a great job from a environment point of view. I'm just hoping we get some orange in those stands and we can disrupt that a little bit and maybe cause them a bit of grief.
Even though the final is still a few more days away, what are your overall thoughts about the first League One season? Were there any surprises in general? Like what's your feedback, and what when you have to talk to the people at Alberta Soccer and with League One Canada, is there any specific things that you would want to mention?
Yeah, I think the consistent game day is huge. I think being able, like I said, to provide players with kind of weekends off and give them a bit of a break, as well as that competitive side, has been very good. So to have consistent game days on a Friday, know what our training schedule is kind of for the whole summer, has been very good. Quality of competition for the most part has been very good as well. I think one thing these players would like is a bit more games within the season. So we've had an 8-game season, 9 with kind of this final, but I think players would like a little bit more. And I know there's been some flexibility with major league players being able to play up, but we're in a little bit different situation where kind of every roster within our women's program has been its own roster. So we've had a little bit less flexibility because we're trying to provide love to every single player within our women's program. But I think it's the games portion, getting a bit more games, which would mean probably an additional team within the league at least. And I think the only other piece was when we talk about balance for university players is maybe finishing 1 week early. Because if we look at university camp starting next week, being able to provide players with 7 to 10 days off prior to their university season, I think that would go a long way. It gives them a bit of a break where they can, again, go away with family, go to the lake before they start the university season. But no, I think it's been great. I think it's definitely a change from the Alberta Major Soccer League from previous years that became, I think, very casual. I think we're getting closer to that semi-pro profile that we wanted. And yeah, no complaints there for me. And hopefully these clubs that are involved and just continue to improve. And there's still, like I said, some very, very good players who are in the Prem environments or in the major league environments that hopefully they've seen it this year and they'll want that more next year. So we get more parity and quality of players within the league in the future.
Thanks, Diogo, for being available, and congrats on being our first 2-time podcast guest. That's great.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jason and Scott.
And yeah, best of luck on the weekend. And thanks for taking the time again with us.
Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Good luck, Diogo. Take care. Okay.
Thanks to Diogo for taking the time. Anything you want to add in about the women's final? I think it should be an interesting match. And I think there's some definite Calgary connections in there, even on the St. Albert side.
Yeah. It's great to see that Calgary players have had such an impact this season. Because it probably impacted it. But no, I kind of wish this game was in Calgary, right? I think this will be a really good battle. And I know you and I have talked about getting out to Broadview this Friday for the men's game. But no, it'd be great if we could watch both. And I'm interested to see what happens in the women's game.
Definitely. Okay, so now we're going to go over to the men's side, and we have an interview with Jay Wheeldon, who is the head coach of the Foothills men's team, and we're going to run that right now. We'd like to welcome Jay Wheeldon to the podcast. He is the head coach of the Foothills men's team, which is competing in the League One men's final on Friday evening. Thanks for joining us again, Jay, second time. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Glad to be here.
How has the team's preparation been leading up to the championship game?
Focused. I said it in an interview yesterday. I think getting into a final, it becomes a habit of being successful, a habit of looking to win. So the mindset's been good this week. We prepare for it like it's any other game, but obviously at the end of it is winning a trophy, and that was something we outlined at the start of the season and something we want to win tomorrow.
So your previous 2 matches against St. Albert resulted in victories for Foothills. Were there any specific lessons from those matches that you believe will be crucial in this final?
Yeah, certainly the second result against them doesn't tell the tale. They were beating us 1-0 to about the 82nd minute, and we just had a late push and a couple of goals our way, which ended up winning the game. So they're a tough pressing team. They've got a good culture. They work for each other, and they make it difficult. And we know, again, they're going to have that mindset. They're coming down. It's a final. They're going to have an attitude to come here and spoil our party on our home turf, and we got to be ready to match it.
Do you think they might have made some tactical adjustments or changes based on their gameplay? And how are you going to prepare for any surprises like that?
Yeah, it could go one or two ways. They had success playing the way they did in the last game, right? They were close to winning it. So, Brian seems a decent coach from what I see. I see there's an identity to his game. Whether they change it completely, that'll be totally up to them. But we anticipate that they'll come down, they'll give everything that they've got, and they'll work for each other and, again, try and spoil the party for us.
So with the final being in Calgary, do you see any kind of home field advantage, or do you think that could be some added pressure playing in front of your own fans?
No, you got to see it as a positive. Anytime you're at home in front of people, in front of your family, in front of your friends. You want to put on a show. And I think the good thing is the players that we've got have been in these environments before, right? They played in big games, whether it be at pro level, at university level, whatever that might be. I think we've got enough experience in our group to ensure it's not a problem being at home.
And before we started recording, you mentioned you're expecting a pretty good turnout on Friday.
Yeah, I believe so. We've advertised it to our club. We've advertised it, on the social medias. We're getting good feedback from the foot soldiers. I think they're going to come out and support local football, and we've had decent numbers so far. I anticipate it. We've got a beer gardens on. We're making it a bit more of a fan event. I think it'll be a decent number that turns up tomorrow.
Okay. Are there any injury concerns, suspensions, any other lineup things? I'm guessing you're probably not going to want to reveal your lineup yet, but is there any lineup updates that we need to know about? Anybody go off to school or anything like that?
No, we've got a full squad in that sense. We signed 22 players for a reason. We've got squad depth, so whoever the 11 is, there's never excuses from our end, because that's why we build a squad. We went to BTB at the weekend. We left 5 or 6 at home, and we went there to win the game. We drew 2-2. We were disappointed, but there will never be excuses on our part, because we feel we've got 22 players who can all start the game.
You've kind of touched on it, but in terms of mentality and how Foothills is approaching this final, considering it's a one-off game with a trophy on the line, it is an exhibition series, but it's kind of like a warm-up for League One's full arrival next summer. What has that been like to prepare for this final compared to maybe some of the other finals and big games that Foothills has been involved in the past?
Yeah, I mean, I've said it a few times already. Even though it's deemed an exhibition series, there's nothing exhibition about it. Every game's been competitive. The players have needed it, and a final's a final. Whether you're playing in U12, kids know it's a final. Whether you're playing at pro level, it's a final. Whether it's pro-am, you're in a final to win it. However you win it, sometimes you can get a bit of luck, a bit of magic, or you just turn up on the day and win it comfortably. But you can also lose a final. And, the biggest thing for me is we put on a performance, and our lads are very capable of that. And then, the result will come. And whatever result it is, I'll be proud of them regardless, because we've gone unbeaten in the season. And we've made the level of League One Alberta very high this season.
Actually, thanks, Jay. We have one more question we just wanted to ask you. So this is the end of the first League One season. How would you evaluate the season as a whole? Like, it was a bit of an experiment, an exhibition season, but what are your thoughts going forward? What was good? What worked? What didn't work?
Well, I think the experience is a lot better in League One. The fact that there's standards in place. AMSL has been great over the years, and I'm never here to dig out AMSL. AMSL is a soccer for life league, right? You turn up and there's 12 players, or some teams don't have coaches. It's just an environment where people want to play. League One, there's been standards, and that stems from, game day experience, referees coming in, players on the field, supporters coming out and getting some bums on seats. I think most teams have averaged between 400 to 600 people watching the game, which I think is great. And it's just the layer underneath professional football. And Alberta was missed out, with it being in Ontario and BC. So the hunger to have it here has been exceptional. And I think we can all agree that the first season's been a massive success. And obviously, we're all, and the clubs that are involved, are looking forward to next year as well.
Yeah, I'd share that same sentiment, Jay, especially with, you look at Ontario and BC, and you look at what TSS Rovers did in the Canadian Championship this year. It shows what League One provides, right?
Absolutely. And that's it, right? Just because we're in Alberta, we can't deny, because we've got some good players, both genders, right, in this province. And we've got to be able to provide them with the opportunity to play, at the highest level that they can play at. And it also aligns with youth sports, which a lot of the players are in. So it's been a great start, is what I'll say. I'm looking forward to how it looks next year, and really excited to see how the progression.
All right. Well, I think that kind of covers most of what we want to talk about. Is there anything else you wanted to add in, Scott? Or
No, I think that's good. Thanks again, Jay, for coming on and for answering our questions.
Yep.
No problem.
Yep. Thanks, Jay. And best of luck tomorrow with the match. And just as a reminder again, it is Friday, 7 p.m. at Broadview. the men's League One finals. Thanks, Jay.
Appreciate it, guys. See you tomorrow.
Thanks again to Jay Wheeldon for the interview, and I'm really looking forward to attending this match on Friday. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, I'm also hoping to attend it on Friday. I think there's a good chance. I'm thinking Foothills has this one. I think they're going to win, but finals are always different than regular season matches, so it's not a done deal yet. They still have to play, and anything can happen in a 90-minute final. So it should be a good game overall, and I'm excited to see what is, I'm kind of embarrassed to say, my first League One game of the season, because I've had practices with my own team on Friday nights all season, so I haven't been able to get out to any Friday night games yet.
Yeah, me neither. So I'm really looking forward to this. I think it should be good. And thanks again to our guests, and we'll do a bit of a recap next week on this. So let's move on to the Alberta Summer Games for a couple minutes. On last week's podcast, we had Nick Zuniga, who was the head coach of the Calgary Zone team. How did the games go, Scott? I know that you were following along with them a little bit. Where did we end up in the end?
Yeah, I unfortunately didn't get to attend any of the games in Okotoks, as I had personal commitments on both Saturday and Sunday, and my sore back on Friday kind of rendered me pretty immobile that night. But the games did look like they were a success. I followed along some of the coverage provided by the Okotoks Western Wheel, which is the local newspaper for that town. Great paper. I'd consider reading it or following them on social if you have any interest in events down there. But in terms of the soccer tournaments, the Zone 3 team, so that's the team coached by Nick Zuniga, won the boys tournament, which was perhaps to be expected. But on the girls' side, the Zone 2 team won. So that was a bit of an upset, them overcoming the likes of Calgary and Edmonton. So yeah, Zone 2 is, it's called Big Country, and it refers to the communities that are outside of Calgary, but in the vicinity. So communities like Airdrie, Cochrane, Okotoks, and a little bit further than that as well, north, south, east, and west. But yeah, they I believe that's the first time the Zone 2 girls team has won the soccer tournament, and it was a big win for them.
Yeah, I'd say that qualifies as a bit of a surprise, but yeah, good on them for sure. And yeah, it does sound like a really cool tournament, and we'll see if any of those players in a few years, maybe we'll be talking about them on the podcast.
Yeah, they might be in League One by the time they're 16, 17. Most of the players playing in the Alberta Summer Games were playing for AYSL teams, so they really are at the top level that you can play when you're 13, 14. The ones who weren't playing in the AYSL were playing Tier 1, but usually for an age group up, so maybe U15 Tier 1. But yeah, good players. I wish I gotten to watch at least one game, but always a fun event, and it takes place regularly. So if the summer or winter games are ever in your neck of the woods, I'd recommend trying to get out to them. Okay,
so let's look ahead to the Cavs match on Saturday. They take on Ottawa in Ottawa. I believe it's a 5 p.m. start, if I'm not mistaken. It's later in the afternoon. And as I sort of mentioned before, they do seem to be the Cavs bogey team. I know that's something we've talked about on the podcast a little bit before, but yeah, it does seem like they don't play well against them.
They don't. And Tommy Wheeldon Jr. doesn't like to call Ottawa Cavalry's bogey team, but history has shown that Cavalry has almost always struggled against Atletico, regardless of where the two are in the standings, and regardless if Cavalry is at home or away. It kind of reminds me of Bayern Munich's relationship with Borussia Mönchengladbach, where no matter how poorly Gladbach is doing that season, they always tend to have the upper hand over Bayern. I think it's the way Ottawa sets themselves up. They're a very defense-focused team, and they love to attack on the counter, and these tactics always seem to... Cavalry just seems vulnerable in that style of game. So they are coming in hot, and I think they're coming in with a lot of confidence now that they're top of the table. But Ottawa, as we've seen before, they just have Cavalry's number. So they'll have a big job on their hands, Cavalry, if they want to continue this great run of form that they're on and kind of silence me because I keep calling Ottawa their bogey team.
Yeah, it seems like every time they play Ottawa, and I don't know, maybe it was that home match last year, I think it was, where Ottawa walked in here, and I seem to remember them kind of just dismantling the Cavs. Like that was just I don't ever remember seeing the Cavs lose at home kind of that way before. And it just seems like this team has their number for whatever reason. So
yeah, no, I know a game they're talking about. It was 3-0 for Ottawa, and I believe 2 or all 3 of those goals came on the counter. And then the next time they were in Calgary, there was that bicycle goal that I wasn't able to make it to that game. And I remember seeing the goal on Twitter and just kicking myself for not being able to be there for it, because it was like a 30-yard bicycle kick or something. No, not 30. Okay, maybe 20 yards out bicycle kick after this huge cross from like the halfway line. I can't remember if it was Balu Tabla who scored it, maybe, but
that sounds right when now that you mention it. So.
Yeah, and he's not with Ottawa anymore, which I'm sure Cavalry appreciates. But they still have players like Ollie Bassett. He's having another good season in the CPL. And yeah, Ottawa's support has been great this year too. I think their fan average has been among the highest in the league, and they seem to be pretty loud and passionate there at Ottawa's home game. So it'll be a tough environment for Cavalry to produce a result.
As we mentioned earlier, no Meyer Bevan due to suspension. Natigny should be back from his red card suspension. And I think it's possible that we might see Callum Montgomery. I do know when I was looking through some of the League One stats that Cavs U21 played last Friday night, I believe, and he did make an appearance, presumably to get some game fitness in. So he's got to be pretty close.
I think Montgomery would almost feel like a new signing, because it's been a long time since he's played, right? He's maybe played in 1 or 2 games this season, dating way back to April or early May. I can't recall when exactly he got injured.
I think 2 games at the most, I think. I'm not have it in front of me, but I think he didn't play more than 2 games.
Okay. And yeah, like I've already mentioned, but Bevan's red card is frustrating. But hey, now they have Willie Akio, so maybe we'll see Akio get the start. And as we've talked about before, Cavalry has at least 3 solid CPL caliber strikers. So I don't know if having Bevan gone will be as disappointing as it could be, but obviously he's been their goal getter all year long.
Okay, so I think we'll wrap it up. Thanks again for listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast. You can subscribe to the podcast by using all the usual podcasting platforms. You can head over to our website at yycsoccer.com for more information about how to subscribe or to leave a question or comment. You can also follow us on Twitter at YYC Soccer 403. Thanks for listening.